Fleet Admiral Vexorin stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Glory, his 4 eyes watching the tactical display with growing confusion. The human fleet had done something he did not expect. They had stopped their retreat. For 300 years, the Keithrani Federation had ruled this sector of space. They had conquered dozens of species. They had built the largest military fleet in the known galaxy. And in all that time, Vexorin had never seen anything like what the humans were doing now. The battle had started 6 hours ago near the Helios mining station. The Federation had sent 50 warships to capture the station and the valuable minerals it produced. The humans had only 12 ships to defend it. The math was simple. The humans should have run away. Any logical species would have run away. At first they did exactly that. When Vexorin's fleet appeared from hyperspace, the human ships fired a few shots and then began to pull back toward their home territory. This made perfect sense. They were outmatched. They could not win. Running away to fight another day was the smart choice. But then one of their ships took heavy damage. The destroyer called the Remembrance had been hit by 3 plasma torpedoes. Its engines were badly hurt. It could only move at half speed. The other human ships could escape easily, but the Remembrance would be caught and destroyed. Vexorin expected the humans to leave their damaged ship behind. This was normal. This was logical. Every species in the Federation did this when necessary. A commander's duty was to save as many ships as possible. Losing 1 ship to save 11 was acceptable math. The humans did not do the acceptable math. Instead of running, all 11 of the remaining human ships turned around. They flew back toward the Federation fleet. They placed themselves between the Remembrance and Vexorin's ships. They formed a protective wall of metal and weapons around their wounded friend. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, a young Keithrani named Vassal, "the human ships have stopped retreating. They are now moving toward us." "I can see that," Vexorin said. His voice was calm, but inside he felt confused. "Why would they do this? They cannot win." "Perhaps they believe we will accept their surrender," Vassal suggested. Vexorin shook his head. That was not right. The human ships had their weapons fully charged. Their shields were at maximum power. They were not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight. "Open a communication channel to the human commander," Vexorin ordered. He wanted to understand what was happening. A moment later, a human face appeared on the main screen. It was a female with dark skin and short gray hair. Her eyes were hard and steady. Behind her, Vexorin could see her bridge crew working quickly at their stations. "I am Fleet Admiral Vexorin of the Keithrani Federation," he said. "You are commander." "Admiral Sarah Chen," the human replied. "United Earth Navy." "Admiral Chen, your situation is hopeless. You are outmatched 4-1. One of your ships is badly damaged. If you continue to fight, you will all die." Vexorin tried to sound reasonable. "Surrender now, and I will spare your crews. Your people will be treated as prisoners of war according to Galactic Convention." Admiral Chen's face did not change. "That's a generous offer, Admiral, but I'm afraid I have to decline." "You would rather die than surrender?" Vexorin asked. He had seen species do this before. The Morvacs had chosen death over surrender during their conquest. It was foolish, but he understood it. "No, Admiral, I would rather fight than leave my people behind." Chen leaned forward slightly. "The Remembrance has 400 sailors on board. I will not abandon them." Vexorin felt his confusion grow. "But you cannot save them. You do not have enough ships. If you stay, you will all die together instead of just them dying alone." "Maybe," Chen said, "but we don't leave our people behind. That's not who we are." The communication ended. The screen returned to showing the tactical display. Vexorin stared at it for a long moment, trying to understand what he had just heard. "Admiral," Vassal said carefully, "your orders." Vexorin had to think about this. The human behavior made no sense to him. In Keithrani culture, a commander's first duty was to the mission and to the greater good of the fleet. Individual ships and individual lives were tools to be used. Sometimes tools had to be sacrificed. The humans seemed to think differently. They treated every single life as precious. They would not accept the loss of 400 sailors, even if trying to save them cost them everything. It was foolish, it was wasteful, it was completely illogical. And yet, Vexorin felt something strange as he watched the human ships form their defensive line. He felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt respect. "All ships prepare to engage," he ordered. "But I want the remembrance captured, not destroyed. If these humans want to die for their friends, then we will take their friends prisoner instead. Let us see how they react to that." The Federation fleet moved forward, 50 ships against 12. The humans did not run. They did not try to negotiate. They simply raised their weapons and prepared to fight. The first shots were fired at exactly 1600 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Plasma beams cut through space. Missiles flew in all directions. Shields flashed and flickered as they absorbed the attacks. Vexorin expected the battle to be short. He expected the humans to fall quickly. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Their ships were smaller than his. Their technology was not as advanced. But the humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. Their ships moved together as one unit. When one ship was attacked, the others would shift to protect it. They covered each other's weak points. They shared shield power and weapon coordination. It was like watching a single organism with 12 bodies. The Federation fleet was not used to this kind of enemy. Keithrani ships fought as individuals. Each captain looked out for himself first and the fleet second. When a Keithrani ship was in trouble, the other ships would often hang back to avoid damage. The humans were the opposite. When the destroyer Vigilance took heavy damage, 3 other ships immediately moved to shield it. They took hits meant for the Vigilance. They sacrificed their own hulls to protect their wounded friend. It should have made them weaker. By refusing to let any ship fall, they spread their damage across the whole fleet. Every ship was getting hurt. Every ship was taking risks. But somehow, it was working. After 30 minutes of fighting, the Federation had destroyed 0 human ships. The humans had destroyed 3 Federation cruisers. "How is this possible?" Vexorin demanded. He stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "They should be dead by now." "Their coordination is unprecedented, Admiral," Vassal said. His voice was shaking slightly. "They fight as if each ship knows exactly what the others will do. There is no hesitation, no selfishness. They move as one." Vexorin watched as another Federation ship exploded. The humans had focused their fire perfectly, hitting the cruiser from 4 different angles at the exact same moment. The cruiser's shields could not handle the combined assault. "This is insane," Vexorin muttered. "They are willing to die for each other, all of them. Every single one of them is willing to die so that the others might live." He thought about his own fleet. If he ordered his captains to sacrifice themselves for another ship, would they obey? Some would. The loyal ones, the brave ones, but many would not. Many would find excuses. Many would protect themselves first. The humans had no such problem. They were all loyal. They were all brave. They would all sacrifice themselves without question. For the first time in his 300 years of military service, Fleet Admiral Vexorin wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. He had thought the humans were weak because they refused to abandon their wounded. Now he was starting to think that their refusal made them stronger. "Bring in the reserve ships," he ordered. "All of them, we end this now." 20 more Federation ships dropped out of hyperspace. The odds were now 70 to 12. Surely that would be enough. But as Vexorin watched the human fleet adjust their formation to meet this new threat, he felt a cold sensation in his stomach. The humans did not look afraid. They did not look defeated. They looked determined. They looked united. They looked like they would fight to the last breath to protect each other. And Vexorin realized, with growing horror, that he might have just started a war he could not win. The Remembrance was still damaged. It could barely move. Its weapons were mostly offline. By all logic, it should have been a liability. It should have been the thing that doomed the human fleet. Instead, it had become their greatest strength, because every human ship was fighting not just for victory, but for the 400 lives aboard that crippled destroyer. They had something to protect. They had a reason to fight beyond glory or conquest. They were fighting for family, and families, Vexorin was learning, do not give up easily. Part 2. The battle entered its second hour, and Fleet Admiral Vexorin could not believe what he was seeing. His fleet of 70 ships had lost 12 vessels. The humans had lost none. It should have been impossible. The math did not work. The Federation had more ships, more guns, more everything, but the humans kept winning anyway. Their small frigate is moving to intercept our attack wing, Vassal reported. His voice was higher than usual. He was scared. The frigate is called the Courage. It has moved directly into the path of 8 of our destroyers. Vexorin watched on the tactical display. The Courage was a tiny ship. It had only 200 crew members. It was facing 8 enemy ships alone. They are sacrificing that ship, he said. Finally, they are learning. But he was wrong. The Courage was not sacrificing itself. It was buying time. As it drew the attention of the 8 destroyers, 2 other human ships swept in from the side. They caught the Federation destroyers in a crossfire. In 30 seconds, 2 of the destroyers were destroyed and 2 more were badly damaged. The Courage survived. Its shields were nearly gone. Its hull was burned and scarred, but it was still flying and its crew was still fighting. They planned that, Vexorin said slowly. The Courage knew the others would come. They trusted their friends to save them. Trust, Vassal repeated the word like it was from a foreign language. They trust each other that much. In the Keithrani Federation, trust was rare. Power was held through fear and strength. Commanders watched their subordinates carefully for signs of betrayal. Ships in a fleet competed with each other for glory and resources. The humans did not seem to have these problems. They trusted each other completely. They knew their friends would come for them, and so they took risks that should have been suicidal. But those risks were not suicidal because the trust was never broken. Admiral, said the communications officer, we are receiving a message from the human fleet. It is Admiral Chen again. Put her on screen. Chen's face appeared again. She looked tired now. There was smoke behind her. Sparks flew from damaged systems, but her eyes were still steady. Her voice was still calm. Admiral Vexorin, she said, I wanted to give you one more chance to withdraw. You have lost many ships. You will lose more. This battle does not need to continue. Vexorin felt anger rise in his chest. This human was offering him a chance to retreat. She was outnumbered 70-12, and she thought he should run away. You are the one who should surrender, he said coldly. You cannot win this fight. Maybe not, Chen admitted, but we can make you pay a price you cannot afford. Look at your losses, Admiral. Do the math. If this continues, how many ships will you have left when it ends? Vexorin looked at the tactical display. 12 ships destroyed, many more damaged. If the ratio continued, he would lose his entire fleet trying to destroy these 12 small human vessels. But he could not retreat. His honor would not allow it. His superiors would never forgive it. He had to win this battle, no matter the cost. Your offer is refused, he said. Prepare to die. Chen nodded slowly. We are prepared. We have been prepared since the moment we chose to stay and fight. But I want you to remember something, Admiral. When this is over, I want you to remember that we gave you a chance to walk away. The screen went dark. Vexorin turned back to the battle. All ships focus fire on the Remembrance, he ordered. Destroy that ship. Remove their reason for staying. His fleet obeyed. Dozens of weapons turned toward the crippled destroyer. Plasma beams and missiles flew through space toward it. But the human ships were already moving. They saw what was happening. They understood the Federation's plan, and they responded with something Vexoran had never seen before. Every human ship moved to protect the Remembrance. They formed a sphere around it. They overlapped their shields to create a wall of energy that nothing could penetrate. They absorbed every shot, every missile, every beam that came toward their wounded friend. They were not just protecting the Remembrance. They were wrapping it in a blanket of metal and energy and love. They were telling the universe that this ship would not die. Not today. Not while they still lived. Vexoran watched in amazement as his assault failed completely. The Remembrance was still floating, still alive, still protected. "This is impossible," he said. "No fleet should be able to do this." But the humans were not finished. While their defensive sphere held, two ships broke away from the formation. They were small and fast, and they flew directly toward the Federation flagship, toward the Eternal Glory, toward Vexoran. "Incoming attack," Vossel shouted. Two human frigates approaching at high speed. Vexoran felt real fear for the first time in decades. All defensive batteries, fire at will. The Eternal Glory unleashed everything it had. Thousands of plasma bolts filled the space around the ship. The two human frigates flew through the storm of fire like dancers. They spun and dodged and rolled, avoiding most of the shots. One frigate was hit. Its shields failed. Its hull began to burn, but it kept coming. It was going to ram the Eternal Glory. It was going to sacrifice itself to take out the enemy flagship. "Brace for impact," Vexoran screamed. But the impact never came. At the last possible second, the second frigate swooped down and caught its damaged friend. Using its own shields and hull, it pushed the first frigate away from the collision course. Both ships tumbled through space, wrapped together, their crews fighting to regain control. The first frigate's crew had been willing to die. The second frigate's crew had refused to let them. "They saved each other," Vexoran whispered. He could not believe what he had just seen. "They were about to destroy my ship, and they gave that up to save each other instead." The two frigates regained control and flew back to join the defensive sphere around the Remembrance. They were both badly damaged now. They would not survive much longer, but they were together. They were with their family. Vexoran sat down heavily in his command chair. His hands were shaking. His four eyes could not focus properly. He was overwhelmed by what he was seeing. "Admiral," Vossel said quietly, "what are your orders?" Vexoran did not answer immediately. He was thinking about everything he had seen in this battle. The humans refused to abandon each other. They trusted each other completely. They would die for each other without hesitation. And somehow, that made them nearly impossible to defeat. A Keithrani fleet would have broken by now. If 12 Keithrani ships faced 70 enemies, they would have scattered. They would have run. They would have each tried to save themselves, and in doing so, they would have made it easy for the enemy to pick them off one by one. The humans did not scatter. They stayed together. They protected each other, and because they were together, they were strong. "Admiral Vexoran," Vossel said again, "your orders." Vexoran looked at the tactical display. He had 58 ships remaining. The humans still had 12. The Federation had lost 12 ships. The humans had lost 0. The math was clear. If the battle continued, the Federation would lose, not because they were outgunned, not because they were outmaneuvered, but because they were fighting an enemy that simply would not give up. "Pull back the fleet," Vexoran ordered. His voice was tired. "Maintain defensive positions. Do not engage the humans further." "Admiral," Vossel sounded shocked, "we are retreating." "I am not retreating," Vexoran said. "I am reconsidering. These humans are not like other species. They fight differently. We need to understand them better before we continue." It was an excuse, and they both knew it. But Vossel did not argue. He had seen the same things Vexorin had seen. He understood. The Federation fleet pulled back. The human ships did not pursue. They stayed in their defensive formation around the Remembrance. They were not trying to win the battle. They were just trying to survive and protect their own. As the distance between the fleets grew, Vexorin stared at the human formation on his screen. He was trying to understand something. He was trying to figure out why these creatures were so different from everything he had ever encountered. And slowly, an answer began to form in his mind. The Keithrani Federation had conquered many species. They had won through strength and numbers and superior technology, but they had never conquered a species like the humans. They had never faced an enemy that would not break. Because the truth was, the humans did not fight as individuals. They fought as a family, and you could not defeat a family by killing one member. You had to kill them all, every single one. And if you could not kill them all, then you had already lost. Vexorin wondered how many humans there were in the galaxy. He wondered if there were enough Federation ships to kill them all. He did not think so. For the first time in his long career, Fleet Admiral Vexorin began to think that perhaps the Keithrani Federation had found an enemy it could not conquer. An enemy that was held together not by fear or power, but by something stronger. Love, trust, loyalty. These were words that meant little in the Federation. But watching the humans fight for each other, Vexorin was beginning to understand that these words meant everything. And that understanding scared him more than any weapon ever could. Part 3. The battle paused, but it was not over. Fleet Admiral Vexorin sat alone in his private chambers aboard the Eternal Glory, trying to understand what had happened. He had fought hundreds of battles in his long life. He had defeated species that were stronger than the Keithrani, species that had better technology, species that had more ships. But he had never faced an enemy like the humans. He had never seen anything like what they did for each other. A signal came from his door. "Enter," he said. His senior captain, Marax, walked in. Marax was old, almost as old as Vexorin himself. He had served in the Federation military for over 200 years. He had seen many things. "Admiral," Marax said, "the officers are confused. They do not understand why we stopped the attack." "Neither do I," Vexorin admitted. "Not fully, but I know we were losing. The math was clear." Marax sat down across from the Admiral. "I have been studying the human ships, reading their communications, trying to understand them." He paused. "I found something interesting." "Tell me." "Their damaged ship, the Remembrance. Do you know why it is called that?" Vexorin shook his head. "Ship names are just names." "Not to humans." Marax pulled out a data pad and showed it to the Admiral. "The Remembrance is named in honor of all the human soldiers who died in past wars. It is a symbol of their belief that no sacrifice should be forgotten, that every person who died fighting deserves to be remembered." Vexorin looked at the data pad. He saw images and records from human history, wars fought on their home planet, wars where millions died, wars where some soldiers became heroes by saving others. "They have done this before," he said slowly. "This behavior, this refusal to leave anyone behind, it is not new for them." "No, Admiral, it is part of who they are. They have stories going back thousands of years about warriors who died to save their friends. They celebrate these stories. They teach them to their children. Every human grows up hearing tales of sacrifice and loyalty." Vexorin felt a chill run through his body. He was beginning to understand something terrible. The humans were not just refusing to abandon their comrades because it was tactically useful. They were doing it because it was built into their very souls. "We cannot beat this," he said. "We cannot break them." Marax nodded grimly. "I believe you are correct. The humans have a phrase, 'Leave no one behind.' It is not just a rule or a strategy. It is a core part of their identity. They would rather die than abandon that principle." "But why?" Vexorin demanded. Why would any species develop such behavior? It makes no logical sense. It weakens them, it costs lives. Does it? Morex asked quietly. Look at what happened today. They were outnumbered nearly 6-1. They should have been destroyed, but they are still alive, all of them, every single ship, every single crew member. Vexorin could not argue with this. The facts were clear. The human behavior that seemed illogical had somehow led to victory. When a species never abandons its own, Morex continued, something interesting happens. Every member of that species knows they are valued. They know they will not be left behind. This creates a level of trust and loyalty that we in the Federation cannot match. Our soldiers fight for fear of punishment, Vexorin said. Their soldiers fight for each other. Yes, and that difference is everything. Vexorin stood and walked to the window of his chambers. Outside, he could see the human fleet still holding its defensive position. The Remembrance was in the center, surrounded by its protectors. Even now, hours after the fighting had stopped, they had not moved. They would not leave until their damaged friend could move with them. What do we do now? Vexorin asked. The Federation Council expects victory. They expect me to capture this mining station and defeat the humans. You could attack again, Morex said. With all our remaining ships, we would probably destroy them eventually. At what cost? Morex was silent for a moment. I estimate we would lose at least 40 more ships, perhaps all of them. The humans would not surrender. They would fight to the end. And then what? We capture a mining station and lose our entire fleet. Other species see that the Federation can be hurt. Other species see that we can be defied. Vexorin shook his head. No, that would be worse than retreat. Then what do you suggest, Admiral? Vexorin thought for a long time. He thought about his duty to the Federation. He thought about his own pride and honor. He thought about the lives of his crew members who trusted him to lead them wisely. And then he thought about the humans, about their Admiral Chen with her calm eyes and steady voice, about the 400 sailors on the Remembrance who had been saved by the courage of their friends, about the way the human ships had wrapped themselves around their wounded comrade like a protective shell. I need to talk to Admiral Chen again, he said finally. There are things I need to understand. Morex looked surprised. You want to negotiate? I want to learn. Vexorin turned back toward the window. We have been fighting the wrong way. We have been trying to break them, but you cannot break something that bends. You cannot shatter something that moves together. He called for a communication channel to be opened. Within minutes, Admiral Chen's face appeared on his private screen. She looked different now. Still tired, but there was something else in her eyes, a kind of satisfaction. She knew she had won, even though the battle was not officially over. Admiral Vexorin, she said, have you reconsidered? I have questions, Vexorin replied. Before anything else, I need to understand something. Chen nodded. Ask. The Remembrance, your damaged ship, you risked everything for it. You risked your entire fleet, your mission, the lives of thousands of your sailors, all for 400 people. Vexorin leaned forward. Why? What makes them worth so much? Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. Have you ever had a family, Admiral? The question surprised Vexorin. I have offspring. They are managed by the state, as is traditional among my people. That's not what I asked. I asked if you have ever had a family. People you love, people who love you, people you would do anything to protect. Vexorin did not know how to answer. The concept was strange to him. In Keithrani culture, such bonds were rare. Relationships were based on usefulness and power, not emotion. I see, Chen said. Then let me explain it to you. Every person on the Remembrance is someone's family. They have parents who love them, children who need them, friends who would miss them. When I look at that ship, I do not see 400 sailors. I see 400 stories, 400 lives that matter to someone. But you could not save them, Vexorin pointed out. By staying, you put even more lives at risk. Maybe, but we had to try. Chen's voice was firm now. Because that is what family does. We do not give up on each other. We do not calculate the odds and decide that some lives are not worth saving. We fight for each other no matter the cost. Even if the cost is your own life. Especially then, Chen smiled slightly. There is an old human saying, greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. We believe that, Admiral. We truly believe it. Vexorin sat back in his chair. He was beginning to understand now. The humans were not just loyal to each other out of duty or training. They genuinely cared about each other. They loved each other. And love, he was realizing, was the most powerful weapon in the universe. If we continue this battle, he said slowly, you will fight to the death, all of you. Yes. You would rather die together than survive alone. Yes, Chen's voice did not waver. But understand this, Admiral, we will not die easily. Every one of my ships is crewed by people who know they are fighting for their family. They will not stop. They will not hesitate. They will make you pay for every inch of space, every second of time. Vexorin believed her. He had seen it with his own eyes. And if you win, he asked, if somehow you destroy my fleet, then we go home, Chen said simply. We repair our ships, we mourn our dead, we remember their sacrifice, and we keep going. You would not attack our territory, seek revenge. Chen shook her head. We did not start this war, Admiral. We do not want it. All we want is to protect our people and live in peace. But we will defend ourselves. We will always defend ourselves. There was no anger in her voice, no hatred, just determination, just love for her people and her way of life. Vexorin realized in that moment that the Federation had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked an enemy that could not be conquered through force. They had started a war they could not win. Because you could not defeat love with weapons. You could not break bonds of family with plasma beams. You could only make those bonds stronger. I need time to think, Vexorin said. I will contact you again soon. Take all the time you need, Admiral. We will be here. Chen paused. But understand this. If you attack again, we will fight. And this time we will not stop until one of us is destroyed. The screen went dark. Vexorin sat alone in the silence, wrestling with the most difficult decision of his long life. Part 4. 3 days passed. The two fleets remained in their positions, watching each other across the empty space near the Helios mining station. Neither side attacked. Neither side retreated. Fleet Admiral Vexorin spent those 3 days learning. He read everything he could find about humans, their history, their culture, their wars, their beliefs. What he found amazed him. The humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had created weapons that could destroy entire cities. They had killed millions of their own kind in terrible conflicts. But through all of that darkness, they had also created something beautiful. They had created stories about heroes who sacrificed themselves for others. They had built monuments to honor the brave. They had developed a culture that celebrated loyalty and love above all else. They are violent, Vexorin said to Morax on the 3rd day. More violent than almost any species we have encountered. They have done terrible things to each other. Yes, Morax agreed. But they have also done wonderful things. Look at this. He showed the Admiral a historical record. During one of their great wars, soldiers from both sides stopped fighting to celebrate a religious holiday together. They shared food. They played games. Then they went back to killing each other the next day. That makes no sense, Vexorin said. It makes perfect sense, Morax replied. They are capable of great violence, yes, but they are also capable of great compassion. They can fight fiercely and love deeply. They can be enemies one moment and friends the next. And they never abandon their own. Never. In every war they have fought, they have always tried to bring their people home, living or dead. They have spent fortunes recovering the bodies of fallen soldiers from ancient battlefields. They have risked lives to save a single prisoner. They have walked into certain death to carry a wounded friend to safety. Vexoran thought about this. In the Keithrani Federation, dead soldiers were left where they fell. There was no ceremony, no remembrance. The dead had no use, so they were forgotten. The humans treated their dead with honor and respect. They built graves and memorials. They held ceremonies. They cried for their lost friends and family. It was strange. It was inefficient. And yet, it was also beautiful in a way that Vexoran could not fully explain. "I have made a decision," he announced. "Contact the Federation Council. I need to speak with them directly." The communication was arranged within the hour. The faces of the 7 council members appeared on Vexoran's screen. They looked impatient and angry. "Admiral Vexoran," said the council leader, an ancient Keithrani named Zorvex, "we expected victory reports. Instead, we hear that you have stopped fighting. Explain yourself." Vexoran took a deep breath. "Honorable Council, I have stopped fighting because continuing would be a mistake. The humans cannot be defeated through conventional warfare." "Impossible," said another council member. "They have only 12 ships, you have nearly 60. Numbers do not matter against this enemy." Vexoran pulled up the recordings of the battle. "Watch, see how they fight, see how they protect each other. They do not break, they do not run, they stand together until the end." The council watched the recordings in silence. They saw the human ships forming their protective sphere. They saw the desperate defense of the Remembrance. They saw the 2 frigates that had nearly sacrificed themselves to attack the flagship, only to save each other at the last moment. "This is unexpected," Zorvex admitted. "Their coordination is remarkable." "It is more than coordination," Vexoran said. "It is love. They love each other. They trust each other completely. And that love makes them stronger than any weapon we have." "Love," another council member laughed. "Love is a weakness. Emotional bonds cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions." "I thought the same," Vexoran replied. "But I was wrong. Watch what happens when a Keithrani fleet takes losses. Ships begin to pull back. Captains become more cautious. Each ship starts thinking about its own survival." He showed another recording. This one was from a battle 10 years ago when the Federation had fought a minor rebellion. As the losses mounted, the Federation ships had indeed become more hesitant. Some had even fled the battlefield. Now watch the humans. As their losses mount, as their situation becomes more desperate, do they become cautious? Do they pull back? The council watched. They saw the humans fight harder as things got worse. They saw ships take terrible risks to protect their friends. They saw courage that seemed impossible. "They become stronger," Zorvex said quietly. "The worse things get, the harder they fight." "Yes, because they are not fighting for themselves. They are fighting for each other." Vexoran leaned forward. "This is something we have never faced before. This is something we cannot defeat." "What are you suggesting?" Zorvex asked. "That we surrender?" "No, I am suggesting that we make peace." Vexoran let those words hang in the air. "The humans do not want war. They only want to protect their people. If we leave them alone, they will leave us alone." "But the mining station is not worth the cost. If we take it by force, we will lose most of our fleet. Word will spread that the Federation can be hurt. Other species will become brave. Our empire will weaken." The council members looked at each other. They were not used to this kind of thinking. The Federation had always expanded through conquest. The idea of making peace with an enemy was strange to them. But they were not fools. They could see the logic in Vexoran's argument. "What do the humans want?" Zorvex asked. "I will find out." Vexoran straightened in his chair. "Give me permission to negotiate. Let me explore the possibility of peace. If it fails, we can always fight later, but let me try." The council debated for nearly an hour. In the end, they agreed. Vexorin was given permission to negotiate with the humans. He contacted Admiral Chen immediately. Her face appeared on his screen, looking surprised. "Admiral Vexorin, I did not expect to hear from you so soon." "I have a proposal," Vexorin said. "I have spoken with my government. We are willing to discuss peace." Chen's eyebrows rose. "Peace? We do not wish to continue this war. It is more costly than we expected." Vexorin found it difficult to admit this, but he forced himself to be honest. "Your people have shown us something we did not understand before. The way you fight for each other, the way you refuse to abandon anyone. It is not a weakness as we thought. It is a strength." "Thank you for recognizing that," Chen said. Her voice was cautious but hopeful. "What are your terms?" "We withdraw from this sector. The Helios mining station remains in human hands. In exchange, you agree to a formal peace treaty. No hostilities between our peoples. Free trade along our borders. Mutual respect for each other's territory." Chen was quiet for a moment. "That is a generous offer, Admiral. May I ask why?" Vexorin thought about how to answer. He could have said many things. He could have talked about strategy and politics and the balance of power in the galaxy. But that was not the real reason. "Because you taught me something today," he said finally. "You taught me that there are things more important than winning. You showed me what it means to fight for the ones you love. And in doing so, you made me question everything I thought I knew about strength and weakness." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "The Keithrani Federation is powerful. We have conquered many worlds, but we have done so through fear and force. We have never truly earned the loyalty of our subjects. They obey us because they are afraid of us." "And our people?" Chen asked. "Your people are not afraid of each other. They trust each other. They love each other. And that makes them willing to do things that our soldiers would never do." Vexorin shook his head. "We cannot beat that. No amount of ships or weapons can beat that." Chen smiled. It was the first time Vexorin had seen her smile. "You are a wise enemy, Admiral Vexorin. Perhaps you could be a wise friend as well." "I would like that," Vexorin said, and to his surprise he meant it. "I will contact my government," Chen said. "I cannot promise anything, but I believe they will be open to peace. We did not want this war. We only wanted to protect our people." "I understand now, better than before." The communication ended. Vexorin sat alone in his chambers, feeling something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope that this war could end without more death. Hope that two species could learn to understand each other. Hope that the lesson he had learned today could spread to others in the Federation. Because if the Keithrani could learn to fight for each other the way the humans did, if they could learn to love and trust instead of fear and control, then perhaps they could become something greater than they had ever been. It was a strange thought for a fleet admiral, but Vexorin was beginning to think that strange thoughts might be exactly what the Federation needed. Part 5. The peace negotiations took 3 weeks. Representatives from both species met on a neutral station in deep space. There were arguments and disagreements. There were moments when it seemed like the talks would fail. But in the end, they succeeded. The Treaty of Helios was signed on a bright morning aboard the diplomatic station. Fleet Admiral Vexorin stood on one side of the table. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the other. Between them was a document that would change the history of both their peoples. "This is an historic moment," said the Federation diplomat who had led the negotiations. "For the first time, the Keithrani Federation has chosen peace over conquest." Vexorin signed his name on the treaty. His hand was steady, but his hearts were racing. He was doing something that had never been done before. He was admitting that the Federation could not win. He was accepting an equal instead of demanding a subject. Chen signed next. Her signature was bold and clear. "It is done," she said. "We are at peace." The room erupted in applause from both sides. Humans and Keithrani shook hands and exchanged words of greeting. It was awkward at first. They had been enemies just weeks ago. But slowly, carefully, they began to talk. Vexorin watched it all with a mixture of wonder and hope. This was what he had wanted. This was what he had fought for in the negotiations. Not just peace, but understanding. Not just an end to war, but the beginning of something new. After the ceremony, he found Admiral Chen standing alone near a window, looking out at the stars. "Admiral Chen," he said, "may I join you?" Of course. She made room for him by the window. "It is beautiful, is it not? All those stars, all those possibilities." "It is." Vexorin looked out at the endless darkness dotted with points of light. "I have spent my life seeing those stars as territories to be conquered, worlds to be taken, species to be subdued. And now I wonder what else they might be, allies to be made, friends to be found, lessons to be learned." Chen smiled. "That is a better way to see the universe, I think." "I have you to thank for that." Vexorin turned to face her. "You and your people, you showed me something I had never seen before. The way we fight for each other." "Yes, but more than that, you showed me why you fight for each other." He paused, searching for the right words. "I always thought that caring for others was a weakness. I thought that emotions made you soft, that love made you vulnerable." "Many species think that way," Chen said. "They are wrong. I know that now. Caring for others is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength there is. Because when you care about someone, you have something to fight for, something worth protecting, something that gives you courage even when things seem hopeless." Chen nodded. "That is exactly right. We humans have a saying, love is the most powerful force in the universe. It sounds like poetry, but it is also true. I am beginning to understand that." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars together. Two former enemies. Two military leaders who had tried to destroy each other, now standing side by side in peace. "Can I ask you something?" Chen said eventually. "Of course." "The remembrance. During the battle, you tried to destroy it specifically. You wanted to take away our reason for staying." "Yes, I thought if I removed the ship you were protecting, you would lose your will to fight. But we would not have." Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Because the remembrance was not really what we were fighting for. It was just a symbol, a reminder of what matters." "What were you really fighting for?" Chen turned to face him. Her eyes were bright with emotion. "Each other. That is what we were fighting for. Every human in that fleet was fighting for the person beside them. The remembrance was important, yes. But even if you had destroyed it, we would have kept fighting, because we would still have each other to protect." Vexorin thought about this. He thought about his own fleet, about the captains who would run if things got too dangerous, about the soldiers who obeyed out of fear, not love. "I want to change things," he said suddenly. "In the Federation, I want to teach our people what you have taught me." "That will not be easy," Chen warned. "Culture is hard to change." "I know, but I have to try." Vexorin straightened his spine. "When I return home, I will tell the council what I have learned. I will tell them that the humans showed me a better way, a way based on trust and love instead of fear and control. Some will not listen. Then I will find the ones who will. I will start small, with my own crew, with my own fleet. I will teach them to care for each other, to fight for each other, to never abandon anyone." Chen reached out and touched his arm. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more than words could say. "That is a noble goal, Admiral. I hope you succeed." "As do I," Vexorin covered her hand with his own. "And I hope that our peoples can learn from each other. Perhaps the humans can teach the Federation about love, and perhaps the Federation can teach the humans about, well, I am not sure what yet." Chen laughed. It was a warm, friendly sound. "We can figure that out together. That is what friends do." Friends, Vexorin let the word sink in. He had never had a friend before, not really. In the Federation, relationships were about power and advantage. No one was truly trusted. no one was truly loved. But perhaps that could change. Perhaps this human, this former enemy, could become something new, something the Keithrani had never had before. A friend. The diplomatic station began to buzz with activity as people prepared to leave. The negotiations were over. The treaty was signed. It was time for everyone to return to their own worlds. But before they parted, Vexorin had one more thing to say. Admiral Chen, Sarah, he used her personal name for the first time, thank you. For what? For showing me that there is another way, for not giving up on your people, for fighting for them even when it seemed hopeless. He paused, and for giving me a chance to understand instead of simply destroying us when you could. Chen smiled. We do not destroy our enemies, Admiral. We try to understand them, because an enemy you understand can become a friend, and a friend is worth far more than a victory. They shook hands one final time. Then Chen turned and walked toward the human shuttle. Her crew was waiting for her, her family. Vexorin watched her go. Then he turned and walked toward his own shuttle. His crew was waiting too. As he walked, he thought about what he would say to them, how he would explain what he had learned, how he would begin to change the culture of the Keithrani military, one ship at a time. It would take years, decades, perhaps his entire remaining life, but it was worth it, because he had seen something beautiful in that battle. He had seen what happened when people truly cared for each other, and he wanted that for his own people. The shuttle ride back to the eternal glory was quiet. Vexorin sat alone with his thoughts, planning what came next. When he finally returned to his flagship, he gathered his entire crew in the main assembly hall. Thousands of Keithrani stood before him, waiting to hear what their admiral would say. Vexorin looked out at their faces. Some were confused, some were curious, some were afraid. Today, he began, I am going to tell you a story about a battle we almost lost, a story about an enemy who became a friend, and a story about the most powerful force in the universe. He took a deep breath and began. It started with a ship called the Remembrance. And as he spoke, telling them about the humans and their strange, beautiful way of fighting, Vexorin saw something change in the eyes of his crew. He saw curiosity replace confusion. He saw hope replace fear. He saw the beginning of something new. It would not be easy. Changing a culture never is. But Vexorin was determined to try, because he had learned the most important lesson of his long life. Love was not a weakness. It was the greatest strength there is. And a species that learned to love each other, truly love each other, could never be defeated. The humans had shown him that. And now he would show the Federation. One ship at a time, one crew at a time, one heart at a time. Until the whole galaxy understood why humans never abandon their comrades in battle. Because they are family. And families never give up on each other. Not ever,